Floyd will stop Tank. That's why they won't choose us. That's why they retiring. Floyd will stop Tank. We already know it. We watched Tank get stopped plenty of times again.
He's back. Floyd Schofield Sr. He's back at it again with the nonsense, but this time, I think it's pretty much justified.
If I tell you I'm good, probably you will say I'm boasting. But if I tell you I'm no good, you know one line.
Yo, what's good, Boxing Talk family? Welcome back to your favorite boxing news channel, Dr. Boxing Talk. We are back for another YouTube video. Banger, man. Yes, sir. Yes, man. I don't know what time it is. The doctor's in the house, man. So check this out. But before we get to it, don't forget to smack that like button. Let's do it together. There you go. I appreciate it. Now, we just saw Floyd Kid Austin Schofield Sr., you know, what they call him, Auntie Sco. Papa Holyfield, you know what they call him, you know, not me, but that's what they call him, you know. He's back to his antics of calling out the champions. And when I say antics, I'm saying that because, you know, he hasn't been looking too solid as of lately, right? You know, he's been looking a little shaky, baby, with his accusations of doing this to Devin Haney, doing that to Shakur, doing this to Tank, doing that to JoJo, and everybody else he's been in camp with, including Adrian Broner and some others, right? I don't mind that. I don't mind you disclosing it. I don't think that that's really I think that's kind of in violation, but you know, these days in the age of social media, everybody talks about what goes on in the gym. But when I used to box as an amateur, you know, we used to live by the creed of what goes on in the gym stays in the gym. You know, shout out to Liam Paul. That's why I rock with him and some others that don't really disclose. But it's a different age that we're in now, social media, you know. It is a way to get some type of relevancy and some attention. And in the boxing landscape, you know, it's not like other sports where, you know, on Friday the Bulls are playing the Lakers, and then on Saturday, you know, the Spurs are playing the Celtics. You know, it's not like that. In boxing, half of the fight is actually getting the fight. So part of that fight acquisition, you know, to acquire the fight that you want, that's kind of a fight in itself. And so I salute Schofield and all the other guys and girls out there that are pretty much promoting themselves and getting themselves in positions to get these big fights. Like even with Schofield, yeah, he's on a big management company, promotional company in Golden Shower Promotions with Oscar De La Ponte. But, you know, in order for him to even get that deal, Schofield Sr. had to be very vocal, you know, just like Bill Haney, who's independent, has to be very vocal on behalf of Devin, just like Brian Norman Sr., who's very vocal, had to be very vocal on behalf of his son as well to get that top rank deal, because he was an upset against Giovanni Santillan, which kind of catapulted him to stardom. And now Bob Arum is finally coming out publicly and supporting Brian Norman Jr. as the best welterweight. And he's been on Top Rank for the longest, right? You never heard him really come out here and back Brian Norman like that until he went through with that impressive, devastating knockout stoppage of Jin Sasaki. So, you know, a lot of times, and I don't even like this person, you know, I can't stand him, but even Teofimo Lopez Sr., you know, sometimes you got to understand the position that they're coming in. Danny Swift Garcia, his father, Angel Garcia, and even Floyd Mayweather, you know, they have very outspoken parents, you know, because they know that in order to get in the game, you have to demand people's attention, right? So that's what Schofield is doing. However, I think that, in my personal opinion, Schofield Sr. and Teofimo Lopez Sr. are one of the few father figures, as far, I mean, father son tandems that are actually a bad look for their son. You know, Teofimo Jr. is just as ignorant as his father Senior, but you know, I do think that they are bad examples. I don't think the other aforementioned fathers are bad. They're just doing what it is, what it takes to get attention. You know, these guys, they go above and beyond with all their other extra curricular activities that they do that brings a negative light on their sons and their fighters. And Teofimo Lopez is an idiot, but Kid Austin, I've always liked Kid Austin. He's like a very humble, articulate, hell of a fighter, you know what I'm saying? So he's good, but his father not so much. However, I know it took me a little while to get here, you know, but I do agree with his father in this case. He's supposed to be calling out the champions. You know, that's what he's supposed to be doing. Now he doesn't have much ground to stand on, because we remember just a couple months ago when you actually got the Shakur fight that you've been begging for, and you fumbled it. You know what I'm saying? First you talked about the sabotaging of your tires, you know, so you couldn't travel. Then you talked about the sabotaging of your passport, so you actually couldn't travel through the air. So first you talk about your travel on the ground, with your car was compromised. Yeah. Then you talk about your travel through the air was compromised. Yeah. And then you said that Shakur conjured up some plan to put some cream on your son's face.
No, did he?
with his masseuse, which is crazy. And it's just, bro, just take accountability. And then in addition to all those excuses, you actually pulled out of the fight. So we don't forget that, and it looks bad. However, Kid Austin's performance and his bounce back against Tevin Farmer, just dismantling and destroying him in one round, that's a hell of a statement and a hell of a way to bounce back. So big salute to Kid Austin, you know what I'm saying, for doing his thing. And now his father's back at it again. You know, he was quiet for a little bit, but now he's back at it, calling out Shakur, Tank, and anybody who will listen. And I'm listening. I'm going to tell you why I'm listening, because now the rankings justify his call out. He's calling him out, not just for clout. He's calling him out based on merit, because he is ranked #1 in the WBA finally. You know, before we said this would happen months ago. We said this would happen when William Zepeda became the interim champion for the WBC, right? Naturally, you know, those of us that paid this much attention to boxing, like I've already disseminated this information, is that the reason why I knew that he was going to be elevated even before the fight is because obviously him winning the fight had a lot to do with it, but I knew it before because William Zepeda was an interim champion. And you know, when you're a champion, whether you're an interim champion, regular champion, or a super champion, you're usually removed out of the rankings of the other sanctioning body for, you know, besides the ones that you're a champion in. For example, William Zepeda is a WBC interim champion. We knew that it was only a matter of time before he was moved from the WBA, IBF, and WBO rankings. And it has finally happened, and it happened. And now since he was removed, well, Kid Austin Schofield was elevated to where? To #1. He's #1 for who? That'd be Gervonta Tank Davis. So does that mean that this fight can happen? Hold on, little buddy. This fight could happen. You would think that's where common sense would lead you to, right? But this is boxing. Like I said before at the very beginning of the video, it's not like basketball or football, the NBA, NFL, or the baseball, MLB, whatever. They don't have a set schedule, right? So half of the fight is actually getting the fight. And you know, with the WBA and President Gilberto Mendoza, unfortunately, they don't always abide by enforcing their mandatories when it comes to a big star. Case in point, Naya Inoue, right? Well, MJ Akhmadaliev, he was a mandatory for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. He was supposed to get the Naya Inoue fight. He did not get it, did not get it, did not get it. And when I say did not get it, did not get it, did not get it, Louis Nery did not get it. TJ Doheny did not get it. Yi Jun Kim did not get it. Ramon Cardenas did not get it. So that's what I'm saying. Did not get it, did not get it, did not get it, did not get it. We don't exaggerate over here. We just tell you the facts. So if you want to be mad and get your panties in a bunch, that's on you. But he did not get it. Meaning, and no coincidence, right? It's no coincidence that was for the WBA belt and that was for the WBA mandatory. And Naya Inoue is a pretty big deal. You know, shout out to Naya Inoue, and he is a big deal. But if the WBA doesn't enforce the mandatory and make the champion fight who they're mandated to fight, who should be obligatory for them to fight, well, then what can MJ Akhmadaliev do until now? Now he's about to get the fight in September, right? And applaud to them. Shout out to Inoue and shout out to MJ Akhmadaliev for that. But the correlation that I'm making is that, well, Gervonta Tank Davis is kind of a big deal too, you know, so they probably don't want to ruffle that champion's feathers and have him do something like relinquish the belt, right? So it's advantageous for them to keep a big personality, a big profile, not to mention a guy that's going to bring in a lot of money, right? Generate a lot of revenue in a champion position. So what I'm saying is, don't be surprised if Tank doesn't want to fight Kid Austin Schofield and the WBA decides not to enforce it, you know, not to make him fight it, you know. So it's good that Schofield Sr. is actually being vocal about it to kind of get the people galvanized and actually interested in and intrigued by this fight potentially. But of course, Gervonta Tank Davis has to handle his rematch against Lamont Roach first. You know, that's first things first. And then if he does that, then we could see if he might fight Kid Austin Schofield. But you know, the rumblings are that in November, if he wins, he could go and fight Jake Paul. So then that'll give the WBA another that'll force him to make another decision. If he fights Jake Paul, do you strip him or do you give him an exemption and let him keep the title? We'll see, man. But I don't think there's anything wrong with Kid Austin calling out Tank. Do I think that he beats Tank? Absolutely not. I think Tank, in my personal opinion, I think Tank is the best at 135. You know what I'm saying? I think he beats all of them. But the only person that I think could beat him possibly is Shakur Stevenson. That's why I want that fight to happen, because I'm picking Tank. I'm siding with Tank, but I think that Tank is the only person that could beat Shakur, and Shakur is the only person that could beat Tank. Now, Lamont Roach will have something to say about that in regards to Tank, and William Zepeda will have something to say about that in regards to Shakur. That's why we love boxing. But this, we'll see how things unfold. But I don't think there's anything wrong with Schofield Senior calling out Tank or any other champion. That's what you're supposed to do, man. Half of the battle is actually getting the battle, you know. And so while I do not care for him, I think he has a lot of things that he could do better, but as far as what he's doing right now and calling out the champions, I never have a problem with people calling out the champions. I don't have to believe that they'll win, but I don't think there's anything wrong with calling out the champions. And if he said he was successful with him against Tank and everybody else is sparring, well, I mean, that's check. That's right on schedule, right? Everybody's successful against Tank and sparring. You feel me? Frank Martin was successful against Tank and sparring. Devin Haney was successful against Tank and sparring. Everybody's successful against Tank and sparring, you know? So if somebody was not successful against Tank and sparring, then that's what I'll be a little worried. But you know, everybody has a I beat Tank sparring story. You know what I'm saying? I might have one if I reference my archives long enough. You know, so everybody has a I beat Tank sparring story. But can you do it in the bright lights? You know, that's remained to be seen. But I think that he deserves the opportunity to try, and that's what him being ranked number 1 in the WBA means. So I have no problem with them calling him out. And I want to be very clear too. I'm not one of those channels that judge the father figures as far as being a dad. I'm not. So I want to make sure that I reiterate this. I didn't mean it as far as him being a father figure. He's probably a great father. I'm saying as far in the confines of boxing goes, I don't think that he necessarily does the right thing, him and Teofimo Lopez Sr. But as far as him being a father, that's out of my jurisdiction. That's none of my business. You know, I don't get involved in the personal business of the athletes. That's, you know what I'm saying, that's not even somewhere I should be, in my personal opinion. But as far as being a good representation and bringing good energy and rapport to their son in as a boxing manager and trainer, I don't think that they're good. I don't think Teofimo Lopez Sr. is a good trainer, or he's a good he brings good attention to his son. And same with Kid Austin Schofield Sr. I don't think that he brings good energy for his son, or a good rapport, or he's even good. I think a lot of stuff that he does brings negativity. Now with Bill Haney, who I think is a great father-son tandem, I think Angel Garcia, Danny Garcia is as well. I think Lomachenko and Papachenko and Shingo Inoue, Nai Inoue, and Mayweather's, you know what I'm saying, and even who else is a good father-son tandem? The Porters, Kenny Porter and Sean Porter. I think that they're good, even if you don't like them as a fighter. The energy and the attention that they bring, and Norman Jr. and Norman Sr., they bring attention to their son as far as, hey, look at their skills. My son's going to do this. We're going to be great for boxing and stuff like that. Anything else is personal. You know what I'm saying? I think that they're great for their sons, but you know, Schofield and Schofield Sr. and Teofimo Lopez Sr., I feel like that they just, you know, they just
know your fucking place, trash.
So yeah, overall, I'm just saying, I think it's one thing to be disliked because, you know, you are catering to your son and bringing attention to him as far as boxing goes. But then when you're going outside of that and using words that you probably shouldn't have used, and making accusations that shouldn't be there against other fighters, like Teofimo Lopez Sr. has done, and like Floyd Kid Austin Schofield Sr. has done, then I think that's when it gets a little rocky, and I think that's when it comes into the negative space. But everything else is just trying to garner attention. That's just what the boxing game is. But y'all let me know what y'all think about that. We're going to wrap it up. Let me know if you think that Kid Austin should be calling out Tank, or he should be focused on somewhere else. Do you think he's ready for Tank? Or do you think that the WBA ranking number 1 is justified? I think so. I think it's justified, and I think that he should get an opportunity at Tank, assuming that Tank wins. But I don't think that he beats Tank. I think Tank stops Kid Austin. But that's just my personal opinion on it. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what y'all think. Don't forget to smack that like button. But most importantly, remember, with God, we can do anything. Without God, we're nothing. The doctor's out. Peace.
From the hood to college, both worlds they had to meet. 6 degrees between us, so cold we're about to freeze. But we're Florida boys, hot takes, we bring the heat. We're moving the culture, the engineers to the streets.